Hello, my name is Phil Block, and I am going to be presenting today on the household finances class or presentation as provided by Little Creek Tribal Colleges in the education department. If I could somebody in the meeting chat, which you can kind of see in the lower right screen, send me a message to make sure that you can hear me. I don't want to get going and realize minutes in, you can't pick me up, so.
Your iPad phones.
All right.
Do it.
Well, I'll just keep going with an overview until I get confirmation that the audio is working. First off, thank you for your time, thank you for attending. I started with this presentation. I developed it under a previous employer, nonprofit that I worked for, and edited it and added to it as time has gone by. I would please ask that you, if you have any questions about topics you wish for me to address, please feel free to speak up. Especially, I'm going to have the best chance of seeing somebody in the meeting chat. So hopefully that will work out well. Audio good. All right, thank you, Eleanor. Okay, now I have actually multiple slide presentations, so I'm just going to go through one today, unless I get some more information regarding what the listeners wish to learn about. So we're going to start with this bit, personal finance. There's a lot to it involves, but I do want to look at these general topics, budgets, credit card pros and cons, even though credit cards are not good or bad, they're neutral. I will try to address them both. I don't use mine very much. I try not to. And I understand that. Please don't hear me talk about them as if I'm advocating using them. I'm trying to present a realistic look at credit cards. Then credit reports, a bit about that, what you can expect to see on there, what you won't. And I'll try to pop up some websites you can kind of see what these websites look like that you may use to retrieve your credit report. Other assistance is the general catch-all point where for topics, personal finance topics that I believe are important to personal finance, but they'll fit into the other three. Also, I do have slide presentations for basics of the finance market and basics of the how to save over time and in the short run. So again, if you want if time permits and you want me to address those topics, feel free to let me know in the meeting chat and we'll make time. But I will be done by 2 to be courteous and cognizant of everyone's time and schedule. Let's begin with budgets. Ooh. Sticker. Okay, budgets. What are they doing? They're for planning. I have only somewhat jokingly called budgets and bill paying homework for adults. I still stand by it. You have to do it. We've all been through, at least high school. We didn't all enjoy homework. I was decent at school. I didn't enjoy it. I do it. Same for these things. My 3 rules of thumb are there at the next bullet points. After the first one is first, a budget does not have to be complex. You make it as complex as you wish. I've known some budgets where it's not only is it a budget, it's a calendar, where they go ahead and they think because sometimes that's a true concern with the household. I know with my wife and I sometimes if we need to get something that isn't part of the usual, like food, gas, things of that nature, and it's gonna be of a noticeable size, we have to time it. And we need to be cognizant of if we need it now, what else do we have to slow down on? That to me is a very complex budget. My wife and I just do it by rule of thumb because we know when we get paid. And most people do. So again, complexity isn't a requirement. But reality is, a budget should be realistic. Well, how does that work? I'll say, how do you get to realistic? I probably will repeat this point sometime later. That's hopefully why you know it's important. Looking back over your financial activities in black and white is kind of the source of the reality. Of course, with prices fluctuating as they have recently, it's not always easy. It's not always the best to look at what's happened before and expect that to continue to happen into the future. So I've always advocated that people, if they want to build a budget and they want to get a good sense of where they've been and where they're going, they should sit down with their bank statements or credit card statements or, heck, some people I know, they do a lot with cash, but they try to keep their receipts so they have a trail. The human brain, as I've noticed that around money, this is my opinion, not necessarily a proven theory. The human brain tends to overestimate the pluses, the money we earn, and underestimate the money we spend. And the way to really combat that is to look at things, the actual dollars and cents of what has happened in the past. And I'll elaborate more on good sources of that after a bit. Lastly, though, my rules of thumb for a budget, it can be flexible. This rides a little bit with complexity. The more complex something is, the less flexible it is. Because then as you're imposing more and more, I shouldn't say rules, but ideas or limits into your budget, you lose flexibility. It's up to you whether you want that. I've known some successful budgets where they basically set it aside and they say, okay, this is our minimums. This is what we have for the overrun. At the end of the month, hopefully we'll have a little bit of this left, and what do we want to do with it? Those are budgets designed to at least make sure all the basics are met, the bills are paid. Those are great. Others are at the end of a month, they'll go by and they say, okay, we did this much, let's save some part, we still have this much, let's save some part, do the other, of course, and enjoy the rest, so on and so forth. Saving is a concept that budgets can lead to, but it's not always necessarily the focus of a budget. Budget is just making sure the bills are getting paid, pure and simple. How do you make one? Start small. I still stick with this myself. I only really build a budget about 3 months at a time, and that's because I've been doing it for a while. So I'll try to break the year into seasons. Like my budget for October to December is a different beast than my budget for, say, April to June. Holidays, birthdays. A lot of my wife's family have birthdays in October to December time frame. One of my sons has a birthday in that time, Christmas, so on and so forth. So I tend to do it like that because we'll save more at other times of years or spend less. And then of course holidays can, kick you around, as I'm fairly certain many of us who just got through the holidays understand. Another thing on how to build it is you need to involve any person who contributes income. And this is not only like if you have a spouse or a roommate, sometimes, with a budget is, a roommate budget, it's a rare thing to see where it's other than making sure they both can pay their part of the rent. I'm thinking spouses, multi-generational families at times. I've encountered where they've asked me about budgets, and I've made sure that If they have anybody who is contributing, then doesn't necessarily mean they always get a vote as to where the money's spent, but they should darn well be told where the money goes. There are a few instances when I was working for a nonprofit drug and alcohol recovery center, where understandably, as the family got back on its feet, they needed one or two families had a teenage child, and they needed a little, as they were getting back on their feet for a time. The child had a part-time job and they needed some of the child's wages to make ends meet until things got better. Well, I advise them that you tell the child what you're doing with that money. The child may not like having to contribute, they may gladly contribute. I'm not going to speak for them, but they need to know where their money goes. Pure common courtesy. But as they're a child, they may not be able to. You guys may just need that money to make rent. So they wouldn't have a vote to say, no, we can't. You're just gonna let them, if you can't honor their vote, be transparent. And that involves, not only the situation I brought up, but spouses. Both spouse in a household must at least know the general ideas as to where the money goes. It prevents a lot of fights, in my experience. So, third, get out the receipts. Like I said, you need to build it on reality. So not only receipts that I mentioned before, but bank statements, credit card statements, paychecks. Receipts are pretty good. You need that less if you pay with a lot of things by debit card. But debit card or bank statement will give you the detail of what you paid for. So building it in stages actually leads into from the getting receipts. Early on, when you're trying to build your budget, and you're learning the actual ebb and flow of money, you tend to, and I would recommend most people should rely on the black and white one. And as they get better at making their money go further, or knowing their financial reality, that doesn't mean you can't ever get away from the receipts or the bank statements or the actual history of black and white print. But you want to do it at first, you want to build it in stages, and your early stages would be more reliant upon the print. And as you go along, still refer back to the print for your own knowledge, your own edification. But as you progress and get better at managing a budget, you won't need it as much, or you won't need to check it as frequently. Go backward, okay. So you want to build it in stages. Another part of that is there are bits and pieces to a budget. And I'll bring up a very rough one in a moment on screen. And your stages are often, the stages you can't ever really get away from is knowing what you bring in, or having a very good estimate. Stage 2, knowing what you have to spend. That little basic hierarchy of needs, shelter, food, so on and so forth. Those things are predictable and reliable. And then the third stage would be if after the first 2 stages you have money left over, what do you want to do with it? What have you forgotten anything? And then lastly, if you're running short, try to look and see where you could cut. So it's figure out your income first, figure out your necessary expenses second, and then third stage is review / figure out what you want to do with or need to do to address either the shortfall or the extra that you have. So I'm going to momentarily, I hope I remember the link. Apparently I don't, because household budget, okay. So there are, Quicken of course offers a lot of it.
You're still sharing the PowerPoint screen.
Oh, I'm still sharing the
So
PowerPoint.
you do a use to share.
Do I go here?
If you go to the top of the screen where it says new share,
Okay,
If you select, just screen that one.
okay, my apologies, thank you, okay. Thank you, Eleanor. So your guide to how to budget money, I will say this is not a bad article. I will freely point you guys to other resources that I view as pretty solid, so. As they say, here, how to budget money, calculate your monthly income. Try the 50-30-20 rule, it's a simple framework. 50% of income to your needs, 30% for wants, and 20% to pay back debt or save. Of course, this will fluctuate because sometimes our needs exceeds 50%. Or the debt repayments would be more than 20%. This is just a rough one. There are ways to track it online if you wish. I don't necessarily know. Oh, shoot, I took it down. I apologize. They had a good, just basic one to illustrate like a list. So NerdWallet article, how to budget. Pretty good. How do you make a budget spreadsheet? Well, that's some pretty simple ones. They do have a calculator. So like say your monthly after tax income. So say right now you're making 15 an hour in a full-time job and you're getting paid weekly. So roughly, if there's no other, I'm just gonna guess that your take home 75% of what you have. That might be high or low. I do apologize for not knowing better, but so 600 bucks a week gross, that's 15 bucks times 40. Your take home would be 450 for 4 weeks, would be 1,800. So this calculator is pretty good. I mean, this would give you your rule of thumb. So I recommend NerdWallet for a lot of things actually, and I wish I had a better list in front of you guys that I used to have, but I found that it's no longer really relevant. I had to keep changing it. They do have a good breakdown for needs: groceries, housing, utilities, transportation. Okay, insurance depends if you have a car or not, but I think they also mean health insurance. Childcare was a big need for me for many years until my kids got old enough where I didn't need to send them to daycare or or after school care. So it's I really do. And I'll actually put this in the chat. For those of you who want to just pop it into your own browser, it's going to be, it's a good start. So rather than me keep hammering away at this, I'm going to then come back to here. My slides. First off though, again, for anybody who came in late, if you have questions, feel free to turn your mic on, that's fine. I'm going to leave the chat here visible because that way I want to be able to see people questions, and that way people can hear. There we are. That way I might be more likely to see your questions in type rather than through the speakers. My last bits of this, let me hide this. There we go. Tricks to stick, and that just means tricks to stick to the budget. For me, simplicity is always easier than complexity in terms of adherence to it or sticking with it. Like I said, you could go for complexity, and you might over time as you get better at it. It depends. However, when you're starting, when you're getting used to it, keep it simple. There's nothing wrong with painting in broad strokes. You learn just as much from in the early times when it's simple than when it gets more complex. Actually, modern public education, when you start, things are simple. When you start learning the topic, it gets more complex. Same idea here. Another trick to stick is using envelopes. Again, this might date me a bit. I've never done this, but I know plenty who have. Where, and it's very, very much based upon using cash. So taking, you know, basically liquidating your paycheck, which I'm indifferent about. If it worked for you, good. You know, having cash and access makes it easier to take. That's entirely up to you. It's your comfort level. But what they would do is that some people that I know where so they take their paycheck and they might withdraw all of it. They, you know, they might turn all the cash, they might withdraw some. And they wanted to stick with, okay, every month I'm going to save so much pure dollars for something I want to do down the line, a vacation, the envelopes are best for when it's a goal, it's a fun goal. I've noticed they work best. Or I want to pay off, I want to save up a down payment for a car, you know, things like that, or a new car. So you would basically take some envelopes and you keep them hopefully somewhere secure. And every month or every paycheck, you take some of the cash out and you put it in that envelope. It's a saving form. It depends upon your comfort level. Some people, it's more tangible to them when they can literally touch the physical money. So it's up to you. I've seen good and bad. Another trick to take is treat it like an advisor. Your budget's an advisor. It should change, it will change. So don't treat your budget as a taskmaster. You made it, you can change it. Treat it like an advisor, like a general idea as to where, how, and where, and why you can spend your money. Lastly, for budgets is short-term goals. Have them. If at all possible, I'm going to say that the goal doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be far into the future either. I've known some people where, especially back when I was working at the recovery center, and I would talk to them about that. They just wanted to have enough extra money where 2 weekends a month they could take their kids to the movies. And that was enough for them to stay invested, like, oh, good. Like, for those people, for that person in particular, they were grateful that their family was still there, you know, had stood by them. But this was this particular person's way to reestablish a relationship with their young children and build it up as something. I can make this promise. It's not only fun for me, it's fun for them. Of course, there's other short-term goals. I rattle off a few of the envelopes, like a vacation, a trip, a new vehicle, something fun that you've always wanted. If your budget is only about the grind, you're less likely to stick with it. Try to build in some fun, whatever your fun to be, or fun that you might have to work for, yes, which I don't know if that necessarily makes it more or less fun, but something to march towards. Any questions or comments right now? I lost my notes for a moment, but all right. I'm going to take a sip of water. Pardon me. Credit cards. All right. They're there. They are not, credit cards are not what they used to be, for good and bad. They are a present reality, but they're not one you have to indulge in. My first bullet point really breaks it down to the basics. Is credit cards can be useful, but really only to build your credit score. I mean, really, that's the only long run thing that having one and using one can do that you can't do for yourself. So if you're intent on never borrowing money, I really can't recommend credit cards for you. The rest of us, however many that is that are listening, I'm going to address the pros and cons as we go. So, this will lead into a credit score / credit report discussion as we go. So credit cards, they show up on your credit report. And usually most reports track 3 years worth, the last 3 years worth of activity. They just, you know, that really doesn't determine if you've carried a balance so much as that you're up to date on it if you are carrying a balance. So you could have one, and if it's sat idle for 3 months, it's not going to do a lot for you. But if they show that you rang up an amount and then paid it off, that would be better. That's again, only if you're intent on needing something, building towards something where having a good credit score would help, i.e. a mortgage or a sizable car loan or what have you. Now, in my case though, as I've put here on the second bullet point, limited use store cards are just as good as our car payments. So a general use credit card isn't any necessarily better than if you basically, you have a store, you go to a lot and they have a credit card and you charge and then pay, charge and then pay. Well, for one thing, you would be better, you know, you're limited, you can only use the credit card at that place. And if you're there fairly regularly and you're charging and then paying, charging and then paying off the credit card, you're limited in how many places you can take that card, but you still get the benefits of improved credit report and credit score. To me, car payments are the best way to do it because they are a regular amount that comes and goes, that goes. Like you have a defined amount of money, you have a defined amount of time into the future, your payment is set and steady. They're probably they are just as good, if not possibly better than credit cards for these kinds of credit score things. If possible, though, with a credit card, if possible, because I know a lot of cards now just automatically refuse increases in the spending limits. I've tried to adhere to that once or twice. I shouldn't say this. I've had to let some of it go once or twice. The rest of the time I've been rejecting it. Even when I'm good with money, mostly because of my training. But I still have to acknowledge that I don't know if I want the possible temptation to be there. Should I ever need to? Yeah. But in your situation, your use of them, you dictate how it goes. These are just general ideas, not requirements. Okay, credit report. That's pretty much all I had for credit cards. I mean, let me back up a moment. I just remembered something. Credit cards, though, because there's so many out there, I do know that the idea of a credit card point system, like frequent flyer miles is a common one, you know, if you look at TV commercials. That's unique to the modern period. That didn't truly exist until the last 20 years, and I know credit cards are much older than that. So credit cards can be tempting because they do present in almost any given way, get it now, pay later. That's how they work. And there's advantages to that, and there's advantages to that. There's also disadvantages if you find you cannot pay later. So in order to kind of entice you, it's like you'll be getting something else, points. That depends upon what you think you can use the points for. I mean, most of them you end up getting like, yeah, flyer miles if you apply towards travel. Well, if you don't travel regularly, there's no significant advantage to that card over any other. I myself have a point system where what I put on the card ends up as money. A fraction of it ends up going as contributions to one of my sons' college savings account. So there's that. Other points are, I had one for a while, which every so often, it would, ever so much that went on my card, I would get, they would pay off directly to the principal of my mortgage. So the points are out there, and there are some cards that will be tailored that if you want something, but not something you can then turn around and spend, those kinds of things exist. Then again, as with every transaction, you run on a credit card, the timing of when you have the money to pay it off versus when they want that payment, that's where the trouble lies quite often. Okay. We'll move on to back to the credit report. Credit report. So every adult is allowed a free copy of their reports once a year. There's not just one company that does it. Every adult is allowed a free copy, and you can go to one place and request all three from all three credit bureaus, they're called. In fact, I'm going to momentarily take us off of this. I'm going to go over to, where's the mouse? That website. You know what it looks like, okay? I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go into it so much. Now, I wonder when this will go away, because this is fairly new, and I haven't used it, the credit report in a while, because I have other options to look my stuff up. Plus, I'm also not borrowing right now. I'm not looking to get a new loan. So sometimes there might be stretches of your life where you don't look at it once a year. I would recommend, as soon as you get an idea that somebody has your information and it's been a while since you called them, pull it just to make sure nobody else. It's also a good source, sorry, I'm rambling a bit, my apologies. Credit reports are not only good at looking at what you've done in the past and maybe, you know, how things shape up, but also they're good for tracking down identity theft. As they see right there, spot identity theft. And so learn more about it. I won't go too much into it, but they do talk about suspicious activity or accounts you don't recognize can be signs of identity theft. Review your credit reports to catch problems early. I would agree. I would recommend this. So, in fact, one time, admittedly, it's been over 15 years. I had when I was, thankfully this was before I was a parent, but I had a Discover card show up on my credit report that I didn't open. Mostly because I had a Discover card at the time, it had no balance on it. And that one was on my credit report, but here was another one. And I never changed it, so on and so forth. And as a result, I contacted, they recommend that you start with the credit bureau because they are neutral people, they are neutral territories in this respect. And they can initiate an investigation for you with the credit card companies. And sure enough, after a little bit of some phone tagging, it took about a month, it came off my report. Sure enough, the next time I pulled one down, it wasn't there anymore. And there's multiple ways to kind of address this stuff. Sometimes you can go directly to the credit card company. Sometimes you can go to the credit report place. So I'm just going to get this started here. But I'm not going to go very far because it requires me to enclose the information that I'm not going to. So what you do is that, so you come here and you click on that red button and you fill out a form and you can request 1, 2, or 3. Now the 3 places that provide one are Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Now, you don't have to get all 3 at once. I've seen some people that are doggedly regular about this, where every like April they'll request one from Equifax, every August they'll request one from Experian, and every December they'll request one from TransUnion, because you can get one. Every one is supposed to give you one once a year for free, but that doesn't mean you have to ask all 3 at the same time. So, you know, that's a way you can get updated information on you roughly 3 to 4 months at a time. It's entirely up to you. So, you know, you have to fill out your name, first, of course, they don't care about your middle initial, and it's your legal name, like, I go by Phil, but my legal name is Philip. Okay, well, there's that. Birth date, of course, I'm gonna put my social security number up there, current address. If you live there, 2 years or more, and if you haven't, then they're gonna look at that. And just, that's some of their first steps by which to verify you are who you are. From here on, in order to progress further, I'm not going to do anything. I can't do anything, but this website, annualcreditreport.com, is very intuitive in terms of, or user friendly, they'll walk you through. And short of hitting the final submit button, because as you can see, it's multiple steps. There's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3, so it's not going to be, there's multiple places you can stop if you're not certain you want to continue. One thing I will say is that this annualcreditreport.com is backed and investigated regularly and endorsed by the Federal Trade Commission, which is basically the government's watchdog for banking, and it's a part of the Department of the Treasury. This website is as close to the government doing it for you as you can get, whether you feel like that about it or not. But this is watched over by a department of the federal government to make sure that everybody is given the same information, that people can get what they need within the rules, and that there is the information is as accurate as possible. The federal government does, I mean, they want accuracy. They don't care about whether, they want accuracy more than they have any axe to grind against any one party. And in fact, they have at times penalized the credit bureaus when they've detected things that, like the credit bureau was dragging its feet on, I want to say it was Equifax, but it's been years. They were dragging their feet on addressing customer concerns and customer investigations about inaccurate parts of them. And they fined Equifax, and Equifax stopped doing it. And they also had to reach out and clarify with the people, like, this is your credit report, this is, you know, these were the errors, so on and so forth. It's not bad. Again, you really only need your credit report if you're going to borrow money. I'm sorry if I'm going on at length, but borrowing money is, if it's not a requirement of modern life, it is something to keep your eyes on that you may have to indulge in. So this, one thing I put on this slide though, not everything you pay ends up on a report. That is true. Not everything you pay is there. Utility bills don't end up there unless they go to collections. What else? Netflix. You know, I think, you know, modern things that you would pay on a regular basis. Those don't go to on the report unless they end up in collections. Your cell phone does not end up on your report regularly until it goes to collections. Things to, I think that's what Nia means in the meeting chat function down there. It's really what ends up there on a regular month in, month out basis: credit card activity, loan activity, whether it be a mortgage or a, I apologize, whether it be a mortgage or a car loan or other loan. If there's any collection efforts out there, address changes, because part of your credit report is a history of your accounts, and part of it is a history of your essential information. Addresses that have been, you've had things mailed to, as in stuff that you had credit card bills, or the addresses that the banks and the various other places have as an address of notice for you. So say you have, you ordered something from Amazon, but you have it delivered to work. As long as that bill is paid, then your work address won't show up on your credit report. or if you have, you have something delivered to a relative's house during the holidays, no, that doesn't show up. But your home address or whatever you've given as a home address to a loan or a credit card company, those show up. Also, one other thing of note on a credit report is there is not only a section for addresses, there is a section for other public notice things, as in because the information is public, like you can look in any given newspaper of note. Woodbury County uses the Sioux City Journal. Notices of divorce, notices of fines. Those are also on your credit report, but they're usually a small section at the back. Why a divorce, you may ask? Well, the people will want to know, like, say you got married and then you secured a mortgage with your loved one. And now years later down the road, you are divorced. And so you apply to maybe get a different loan. The loan company will probably want to know, if you're not, what verification that, oh, now you're only drawing on one income, not you and your partners. So I think it's a little shitty, but I can understand the logic in a way. So in essence, it's not a bad idea to just get your credit report once a year, like establish it around some point in the year that you would remember such things. I tend to aim mine close to my birthday, just because, but it's up to you. One moment. Okay. Just checking the time. Okay. Other assistance regarding personal finance. I bring up Junior League because they've done good things, I believe. I don't know who to contact for any of the local chapters. I will bring up their website just to kind of elaborate. It is a nonprofit. I believe Sioux City has one, yes. It was built around Junior League was improving women's access to social services was the original, and then volunteer opportunities, it went from there, Well, early on, they also realized that one of their early focuses was on making sure that women understood the financial realities of their home, but also that the system, how it's established. Also, they were there at the beginning to spearhead some of the struggles in the 60s and 70s when women had to be married and have their husbands sign off so they could get a credit card. I know. Anyway, they've been doing good things to improve women, as their summary here says, aimed at improving communities and the social, cultural, and political fabric of civil society. They offer, to get back to my slide, Junior League. I'm not going to expand it out. I may or may not expand it up. They may not. They have offered in the past. I don't know if they still do, but I know they have plenty of written materials. Your basic understanding of budgeting, household finance, heck, balancing a checkbook, although I don't know if that's really still a focus of theirs anymore. But the Junior League has always been there. Just because their focus was on women doesn't mean it's exclusively still on women in everything they do anymore. I advocate that if you're just even curious to see what they have out there for free, give their websites a check. The Center for Siouxland is another place. It's at 715. It was last time you at 715 Douglas Street, Sioux City. I know it's still in existence, but I don't know if they moved. They are the local debt consolidation nonprofit. They do various other things. They work also closely with the junior league. Their focus, they offer subsidized debt consolidation services. I found through not only stories told to me, but what I've read up about them, that they're the cheapest ones in the area in terms of they do the best for the person who needs consolidation that can be found around here, competing heavily with the financial experts in the local banks that offer similar services. I recommend going to them if you think it's time to consolidate your debt. I would not necessarily I won't go into depth at this point regarding that, just to be respectful of time. But what debt consolidation does, as they do it in a very summarized way of putting it, you go to them, you schedule an appointment, you go to them, you bring your most recent credit report if you can find one. And if not, they'll look one up for you. You present to them and say, these bills I'd like to consolidate, and they'll look over your whole financial situation. They'll run some numbers and they'll come up with an idea as to say, okay, if you do that, you have to close these accounts. We'll pay those off. You'll pay the loan to this agency. And it's not Center for Siouxland, they don't hold it. They refer you over to a federal agency and you pay this over time. You'll owe less in the short, you pay for longer, but in these upcoming months, you'll owe less because the interest penalties fine will greatly slow down. So you'll be paying longer into the future, yes, but overall you'll save money and you'll especially notice it early on. Problem is that not a problem, but a reality is that debt consolidation then shows up on your credit report as well, because it's a loan, yes, held by a government agency, but still a loan. But it does, I've encountered several people who it gave them the breathing room they needed in the short term and in the long term to get their feet under them. Lastly, this name might be familiar, Dave Ramsey, been a big pusher for personal finance. He's made a miniature internet and publishing empire about it. I recommend some of what he suggests. Other times though, I think I'm not certain how applicable some of his things are to rural communities. I'll just say that. I'll leave it up to you to decide if you want to pursue and look at his information. Can be found at daveramsey.com. For the most part, it's very, very, for the vast majority of what he recommends, it's very, very sound. Planning advice. He has both short-term and long-term parts of his presentations as to say, well, try to do this for the next few months. And then as things get better, consider step B, on and on and on. So he is a wealth of information that you have to take. As with any of these people, you're allowed to say no. Junior League, Center for Siouxland, or him, you're allowed to say, I don't think so. It's not like you stepping into the ring, you have to do whatever they say in the exact order they say it. At this point, I'm kind of at the end of my set presentation here. At this point, anybody can feel free to ask me a question through their mic or through the chat. I take a sip of water so anybody can take a moment to ask a question. I don't see anybody turning their mics on, or as far as I can tell, or submitting a question. Although it seems like everybody in this room right now knows where my office is, so they could probably hunt me down later. Well, if there's nothing further, for anybody listening to this right now or be listening to the recording, my email address, and I do apologize, I don't have it immediately on the screen. So I will actually type it on this, we'll just put it on the screen, my information, I'll type it out quick. All right. I can be reached at this email address, phil.block@littlepriest.edu. Whoop. Yeah, it looks like she has something, sorry. All right. Feel free to email me. If anybody currently listening or listening on the recording.
Would you mind making the font size bigger?
Sure, bigger. Let's zoom this in. I do, thank you. That good?
Yeah, that works on my screen.
Okay, there we go. Move it up. In fact, it might be, at times, it's better to email me your questions, because if there's details you wish to share, having them in front of me in print, allows me to, answer more completely. Emailing me questions is more than welcome at this address. My work phone, I wish I could be reached at the college. That's the right one, right? Right. I would give it out so rarely. I can't remember right now my extension, but I'm the only person named Phil who works there. You can call me there. If I'm not there, please leave a message. These general questions. Oh, thank you. Get fed my extension by a coworker. So that's where you can reach me. If I'm not there, please leave a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I freely admit that in some cases I may not be able to answer you as well as you may like. I'm still learning about personal finance, even 20 odd years into my career. But I can do my best to answer you, or at least point you to a resource that would do a better job than me. So if this is it, I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you for your time.